Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I'm so excited because today we have Shazia Imam in with us today. Hi Shazia, how are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you.
I know, you're like one of my favorite people on the planet, and I'm so excited. Why don't you, to get us going, tell us a little bit about your background so that the listeners can get to know you.
Sure, yeah. So I have over 2 decades of experience in management consulting at a number of really big firms that many people have probably heard of, like Accenture, Booz Allen Hamilton, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Disneyland is one of my favorite, of course. And I am also the host of the podcast Feminine and Fulfilled, which is a pure passion project of mine. And just recently I made a really big leap and I've gone out completely on my own. I have a calling to have women connect to their whole purpose, to their best lives, and really go after their big dreams. And so I did that myself, and I left this wonderful corporate career I had to go all in.
Nice. All in. So as you know, I did that as well about 17 months or so ago. So tell us a little bit about why that happened and why you made that decision.
You know, it was a really, really big decision because I, for a long time, had been really identified by my very successful corporate career. And I really enjoyed it. I'm not a person who ever thought, oh, I hate this. But I always had this bigger calling. And for a long time, I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe I should go get my MBA, or maybe I should change companies, or I always thought it was something related to what I'd always known. And when I actually trusted my calling, there were a number of really big things that happened in my life, in my personal life, that had me really question where I was. And I ended up listening to the clues that had always been there. I always had people around me saying, Shazia, you should be a life coach. And I thought, life coach? I mean, life coaches are like woo-woo people like spinning in circles in some field or something. I'm like, I'm an engineer by trade. I don't think so. So, sometimes though things happen in your life and you get that wake-up call, and I got it loud and clear, and I said something has to change. And I ended up just doing some coaching training just because I was like, why not? And it turned out to be like, oh my gosh, this is what I've always loved to do. Right. And so I started that, and I've loved it. But then I kept my job because, as you're building a business, it's hard to go all in. And so ultimately I just decided, okay, I've been in business now for a few years, and I teach women about taking that bold move, that leap of faith, and how long am I going to keep this? Even though it was part-time, I scaled down, then I went to part-time. I did it in baby steps, and that's okay because that worked. And then, 2020 was around the corner. My 40th birthday was coming up, and I said, you know what? I'm going to look back one day in my life, and I'm going to say, I'm so glad I cut that safety net.
Yeah.
And so I decided right before my 40th birthday that would be my last day.
Yeah, that's a big decision, isn't it?
It's huge. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Congratulations. How freeing do you feel?
I feel really free. I'll be honest, when I was emailing my farewell email, I was crying because that's how much I love the company I was at. I loved them. And I definitely was so bittersweet, but that was, a Friday, and then on Monday came, and I was like, I'm all in, and I feel fresh. I feel renewed. I feel like I have the space now to really go all in. And that's just amazing.
Yeah, I resonate so much with what you say about, when you're in it, right? Like, so wherever it is that you're working, whatever it is that you're doing. And I was the same. I loved my company. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved my team. And yet, even though all that was still the case and everything looked great on paper, there was still something inside me that was just kind of gnawing at me. And it sounds like you kind of had that same thing. So what was the wake up call? What was the reason why, what finally made that final decision that said, yep, now I'm going to go for it?
So I've been asking myself this question a lot. I don't know why it came to me, but about a year ago, I started really thinking about my mortality. And it's something we don't actually think about. But there was a study done by this hospice nurse. I don't know if you've heard about this study, Tina, where this hospice nurse, she interviewed 1,000 people on their deathbed, essentially. And what she found was that the number one regret of people on their deathbed was not living their life, but living the life that they were expected to, or, for somebody else. And that had really sat with me for a while. And last year, I just started thinking about my mortality. And I started thinking, okay, on my deathbed, will I regret doing this or not? And I started doing that for small things in my life, like going on a retreat. Okay, on my deathbed, will I regret going or not going? And it was like the answer would come like this.
Right.
And I started really following that methodology, I guess, in how I was doing things. And when I really thought about my job, it was, do I want to be in my deathbed and say, I did it, I took the leap of faith, or I held on and I played small? Because staying at my job for me, it had gotten to a point where I knew it was a safety net. Yeah. And that safety net wasn't serving me. It wasn't serving my purpose. It wasn't actually really going to allow me to totally fly. It's almost like if you think of a bird, and it has like even a little rock hanging, right? Mm-hmm. It might be a beautiful rock. It might be like, you might even think, oh, how cute, how nice is that? The bird might even think, oh, this rock is helpful for me for whatever reason. But that, even a pebble won't allow that bird to fly as high as it can go. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I knew that this safety net, if I just kept holding on, it would be like a little rock. Mm-hmm. And I had to let go. I just had to. And it was something that was calling within me. And I think as I was reaching my 40th milestone, it's a big milestone. It's, I know everyone's saying 40 is the new 30 and, all these things. But the truth is 40 it's a big milestone. And I just thought, this is the time. I do it now, or maybe I'll just always find another reason to stay. And so it was just almost like, it just was this calling of like, this is the time, even though, Tina, it's literally in the worst time of our lifetime. And it's exactly perfect, because that's the timing I needed to say, well, how much faith do you have in this leap of faith?
Yeah, faith is it's so true about faith. I mean, I think about, you've mentioned safety net a couple of times now, right? So, mm-hmm. and yeah, when we have the salary and the title and all that, it is a safety net. So what would you say to people right now that, because we've been kind of blessed with like this open blank slate, right? Like, so based on the virus, based on what's going on right now in the world, and the fact that you just made your leap and kind of came away from that safety net, what do you think that people's biggest need is right now in this time, in this moment?
People's biggest need is certainty. I think what we're facing is all the uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so I know people are really craving certainty, but there is something beautiful I learned from a teacher years ago that said that your greatest level of success, or your level of success, is directly correlated to your comfort with uncertainty.
Right.
So like, just take that in for a moment, because when I first heard that, I was like, whoa, I love a thing like a nicely packaged box and bow and like that. Of course, who doesn't like a nice paycheck coming in and and it's stable and it's good and it's certain, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's nothing wrong with that. And we are in the most uncertain time that many of us have faced in our entire lifetime. Mm-hmm. And we can make a choice to say, oh God, like this sucks, and what's going to happen, and get caught up in what we're actually afraid of, which is uncertainty. Or we can say, okay, what would it be like to get comfortable with uncertainty and trust, and then see our level of success go to a new place that I know when I, for a long time, couldn't even fathom. But now that I'm in it, I'm like, there's so much possibility. Yeah. And Tina, I'm sure you've experienced that too. It's almost like when you allow yourself to be comfortable with something outside of your comfort zone, outside of that certainty, that's when the magic starts happening.
Oh yeah, it's when all the possibilities happen, right? Like that's when all the possibilities open up. So so what would you say, Shazia, to someone who is listening to this and they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about the uncertainty. And I still need to feel like, because a lot of the times it's about control, right? It's about controlling the outcome. It's about controlling the result. And so what advice would you give to somebody that is sitting here right now going, I don't know how. Like, I get what you're saying, but I don't know how to implement it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, bringing it back to control, because that's what it is. And I think the first thing is to acknowledge that. Like, there's nothing wrong. Like, I like to be in control.
Right. It's okay to say that you do, right?
Yeah, it's okay, right? Like, okay, we can be all zen and like, oh no, I'm like so good. Look, like, let's be honest. We do like to be in control. I definitely like to be in control. So I think the first thing is acknowledging that there is a feeling of not being in control. Mm-hmm. And that causes anxiety, that causes overwhelm, that causes a lot of feelings. But what I'm really recommending to my clients today is that the good news is that if you are in a place of immense privilege, which most of us are, I imagine the person watching, if you do have a job today, that privilege in and of itself, like, you can breathe. It doesn't mean you're not going to have feelings, but you can also shift your perspective. So the first thing is to take that breath and realize I am breathing. Until we stop breathing, we are living.
Right.
So be in this present moment, literally with your breath. Okay, so you breathe. Okay, I like things to be in control and I'm breathing. Like, just, it's almost like, okay, first settle. And then from there is when you can start to shift perspective. And I know people aren't really talking about this, so it might come off very different. But what would it be like to shift into a perspective of, okay, I'm okay. I'm good, actually. And maybe in some ways, I've been wishing for this time at home. I've been waiting for the opportunity to have the time to do the project. Or if you want to go even deeper, you can really start thinking about, wow, I always wondered what it would be like if things were different. And now all of a sudden things are very different.
Right.
So shifting the perspective into a place of possibility, shifting it into, okay, what if I made the most of this time? What if I treated this as a staycation? And I'm not taking away from all of the very difficult things that are happening. But in our day-to-day life, you may be likely kind of just in a new routine. It's a new normal. But what if you treated it as a staycation? Because at some point, we're going to go back to life. Things will change, but things will go back to a place. We've seen history has repeated itself enough to know that we'll be okay. Right. So if we're going to be okay, then you don't want to get 2 months from now and be like, oh, I wish, when I had that time at home, I wasn't so worried. So my real advice is to not be worried, is to not be in a state of consuming all this information. Stay with the news, of course, to know what you need to know. Be a good citizen. This is not in any way to say live in a fairy tale land. Right. And you can be a responsible citizen, you can be a loving, caring individual, and you can also be in a state of being present with this time in a way that can actually even be in a state of joy. Like, I just want to give that permission right now, because I think we're all kind of tightly wound and nobody actually wants to say, gosh, I kind of just want to breathe. Like, am I allowed to? Like, am I allowed to enjoy right now? Yes.
Permission to breathe. Permission to breathe, right?
Permission, full permission.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my clients earlier today, and she was really struggling through like the news, right? She's in her house and she's watching news loop after loop after loop after loop. And I was like, okay, I get that you want to be informed, and let's put a time limit on it, right? So like, you know, we don't like, there's so much news and so much out there that's going on, and putting a time limit on it so that you're not just consumed all day long with that energy is a really, really good practice to put in place.
Absolutely. You know, for me, I check the news once a day.
Yeah.
I have my news source. I go and I read it. I make sure that I'm caught up. I make sure I'm following whatever direction, you know, my local, state, and national government is saying. I'm doing my part, but I can't consume everybody's information and everybody's thought. Like, you know, there was something I heard that the amount of information that we receive in one day through all of the platforms and social media and news is what somebody in a traditional culture would have seen in a lifetime.
Yeah, it's crazy. And with everybody now working remotely and at home, even just the noise in social media and that kind of noise is even just ramping up. So like, we were already living in this noisy, chaotic kind of environment, and it's ramping up and ramping up. And I really truly believe that this was like just a massive pause. Like, just let's pause and think about how we really want to move into where we're going. And so it's just it's a reset for everyone, right? It's like this massive reset that says you get to choose your priorities moving forward.
Absolutely. And taking the agency of choice, like, let's go back to control for a moment.
Yeah.
What you can control the most it is your perspective and is your choice. Like, if you want to be in control, like, there you go. Like, that is one thing that we all have control over. We have control over our perspective, our choice, the decisions that we make, and how we choose to even experience this.
Yeah. And we were talking about freedom earlier. Like, when you really have that choice point, and you can choose how you shift your perspective, you can choose how you think about it. You want to talk about freeing. Again, it kind of goes back to that, like, it's just a freer way to live. So I want to shift a little bit, Shazia, and talk about opportunities. So what opportunities do you think are out there right now for people?
I think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, one of the biggest opportunities that I'm seeing is that when you think about, like you said, it's a big pause. We have lifted off a lot of stories, right? The stories of I'm too busy, one day, like there's all these layers that have been lifted, and now we're on our own. Like, it's a time to like really have like a come to Jesus moment with yourself, right? Yeah. Where I'm like, am I using that right? So it's this opportunity to really have that, where it's like, okay, if you're taking off all the layers and the stories and even the masks, because we have masks with ourselves.
Yeah.
To ourselves.
Lots of them.
So many. So what would it be like to really be honest, like, with yourself? Because I believe that each of us is having a unique experience in this same circumstance, and that something is being called forth from each of us. Now, we can choose to try to pile things on top, but the universe is saying, no, I'm taking everything away so that you can see with clarity what's there. So the opportunity is, will you heed the call that's coming for you? Because it is coming to every single person. And to me, I really believe that the call is for leaders to really show up. The call is for, you know, the woman who's maybe been thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do that, even though secretly you're dreaming of it. Like, the call is, yes, now is the time. Like, go for it. There's never been a better time than now to just look at everything from a completely new paradigm. And I think that's such a gift, and and even miraculous that we are all having this unique experience and having this opportunity to really see ourselves completely naked.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even just, it's like, it's unique and it's unified, right? Like we're
Yes.
all on this like level playing field, able to really like the time is now. If you get to step into your leadership no matter where you're at in your life, right? What has
Yeah.
been, so speaking of leadership, I met you through a leadership program. What
Mhm.
has been, and I'm not just talking about that program, I'm talking about basically in life, but like what's been your biggest leadership lesson in your life?
My biggest lesson has been that I'm a leader.
Yeah, nice. I love
It
that.
really has, because I think the number one thing that stops people, and it stopped me for such a long time, was my own self-doubt.
Yeah.
It was my own self-doubt. There was actually, I could have made up stories about, oh, maybe it's, the color of my skin or my religion or my gender or where I live. Or I mean, I could have come up with a ton of things.
Mm.
But really, I just had a lot of ingrained self-doubt that prevented me from really moving forward. And what I found is that as I've been on this leadership journey, I am a leader. And in fact, something that people were even reflecting back to me, because the clues are always there. People are always telling you, like, the clues are there. So it's like, listen.
Yeah.
So,
People see you before you see you. I know that was my experience, right?
yes,
People are like, everybody sees this. How come you don't see this?
exactly. So this is the time to see yourself, to really be in that leadership, because for me, like, that has been the greatest lesson, is that I am a leader. So once I really accepted that, I was like, okay, well, from this place, then I get to stand tall even when I don't feel like it. I get to show up even though, trust me, I'd rather not some days. And that I am more than my self-doubt.
Yeah.
So,
So much more. So
so much.
much more.
Yeah.
So the
So,
name of,
so many people.
right. The name of the podcast is Your Leadership Legacy. And so my last question for everybody that's on, I always ask, what is the leadership legacy that you are aspiring to leave?
For me, I love the idea of a woman being her whole self. Like, it makes me giddy. I don't know why, but it just does. And when I think about a woman who can feel whole, can be wealthy, can feel confident and show up as a leader and have people really follow her because she is modeling what's possible. Like, if I can teach that to other women, then to me, that would be the most beautiful legacy. Because at the end of the day, if every human being lived to the richness of their capacity and their talents,
Imagine.
yeah, the world would be a completely different place. So I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of that. And that's why, the podcast, Feminine and Fulfilled, it's all about that. It's like, go for it. Here's inspiration. You got this.
That's amazing. And so that leads right into the next and final question for you. As far as where can people find you?
So people can find me at thelifeengineer.com. That's where you can find everything. You'll find the podcast. You'll find out more about the resources I have and the gifts that I have for you. I'm on Facebook at Shazia TLE, as in the Life Engineer. I'm on Instagram at the Life Engineer. And then, of course, the podcast is Feminine and Fulfilled. So
that's amazing. Tell me about the Life Engineer.
So
you're an engineer in your background, but how does that come to life?
Yeah, I love words. So I am an engineer by trade, but when I went into life coaching, I was like, oh, well, I will title myself the Life Engineer. And I trademarked it and grabbed it. And it's just perfect.
I love that. Yeah, I love, love, love it. All right. Well, Shazia, thank you so much for being on. The time kind of flew by. I want to acknowledge you. You are this powerful, amazing, bright light in this world. You have this magnetic personality, and I just love you so much. So thank you so much for being on. And everybody go follow Shazia. That's my advice for the day.
Thank you, Tina. I loved joining, and thank you for putting this together so people can continue to go for what it is they're meant to do.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, that ends this podcast. We will see you next time on Your Leadership Legacy. Bye. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.